Welcome back guys to another custom mod video. Today we'll be looking at the WASD V3. It's a TKL layout and comes stock with Cherry MX Browns. Without further ado, let's get into it. So the V3 iteration of the WASD only has a single screw underneath the board, no screws anywhere else. This screw essentially does nothing, as the case cover is held to the case bottom via plastic clips. There are 12 plastic clips sitting around the board as shown here. In order to unclip the cover, one needs to apply the directional pressure as indicated by the arrows onto the board clip with prying tools or similar in order to pop the clips out of their sockets. I found it easiest to start this process off by undoing the two clips in the lower left hand corner simultaneously first. This was probably the toughest part of the process, as I had to be careful not to cause too much damage to the clips or edges of the top cover and the bottom half of the case. The input cable into the PCB was held by a rather strong plastic socket, so that took a bit of effort as well, with a small screwdriver to push it out. The WASD is not hot swap friendly, as you can tell, so once again it's have at it with the soldering iron and desoldering pump. One day I'll be able to afford a fancy solder sucker tool, one day. I think the V3 shares the same PCB as the Code V3, as I noticed there were soldered over pinholes where you could slot LEDs. But we're not going to do that for this project, so I'll just leave that be, plus I wouldn't know the first thing about how to do that, and who knows what else I need to solder in. The switch plate was quite a heavy piece, being made of steel and contributes majorly to the overall weight of the keyboard. First up, we lube our Cherry MX Browns. I kicked the whole process off by bag lubing the springs with Krytox 105. About 5 to 8 drops in the bag and we give it a nice shake, as I'm sure you've seen many times. For the switches, typical lubing pattern, except I kept the tactile part of the stem dry to retain the feel of the bump. I really liked how the Cherry MX Browns turned out after lubing. They certainly felt a lot better than the RK switches I found in the Royal Clutch. So yeah, here's a quick sound test before and after lubing. Next, my favourite go-to mod now for improving sound acoustics, which is the PE foam sandwiched between the plate and PCB. I drop 4 of the Cherry Browns in to create the tension, then use a small screwdriver to punch out holes for the main switch pins. We then pop the rest of the switches back on and give them a quick test once the soldering is done. Once that's all good, it's onwards to firming up the acoustics of the bottom half of the case. Like we did with the Keychron K2V2, we drop in sound dampening foam into the bottom half of the case. Key thing here is to make the cutout for the dip switches. Yes, this board uses dip switches to manage its functional layers and programmable macros. I think it adds a bit of vintage flavour to the design, and of course it works as well. At 3mm, the foam gave the PCB quite a snug fit, and so ensured that there was no hollowness or vibration left in the board acoustics, which was great. The The WASD comes with Costar stabs. These stabs are comprised of a wire, 2 plate mount stabilizer clips, and 2 pegs, which sits in the plate mounted clips and also holds the stabilizer wire. When I first popped off the keycaps, I was like, what the hell is this? And it took a few tries for me to get used to working with them after exclusively working with the usual cherry style stabs. For the lubing, I used Krytox 205 grade 0. I start with the recessed part of the clips where the peg sits and slides on. Next, I use dielectric grease for the stab wires, a reasonable amount on the wire ends as well as some on the right angle of the wire, which is where it clips onto the stabilizer clips. Once you're ready to pop the pegs back in, you want to make sure the longer side is north facing, which allows the wire to have enough travel to pop up. Otherwise, if you have it the wrong way around, the key will actually get stuck. This brings us to the end of the mods, so onwards to our sound comparison. As always, hope you enjoyed this video, and if you made it this far, drop the channel a like and subscribe. See you next time.